I'm Rachel Meliotis, a senior editor at O'Reilly Media, and I'm here with Kathryn Rotondo. She makes apps for kids and is host of the Motherboard podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me, you make apps for kids. Mm-hmm. So tell me, what do you have to think about when you're doing that specifically for that audience?
Yeah, well, little kids are funny. It can seem like they understand touch devices right away. You know, they can pick it up and start tapping and swiping and trying to figure it out. But there are some things that they do that are different than what adults do. Sure. So, for example, tap is a pretty straightforward gesture, but little kids don't have an understanding of how long they need to tap. Sure. So, for example, in iOS programming, there's a difference between a tap and a long tap, and your app might want to register both, as the same gesture. Or, for example, if you come from the web programming world, you might be used to sort of waiting for a user interfacing with a mouse. You might wait not to register input on click, but on release to see if they've changed their mind and moved the mouse away. But if you wait until release for kids, they might think that your app is unresponsive. They'll have tapped it and maybe left their finger there and
Sure.
wonder why it's not doing anything.
Do you find that there's also an opportunity to teach kids the different gestures when you're making something?
There is, yeah. There are ways to show the instructions visually. That's the most effective, to have kind of an animation of a chubby little toddler hand showing what you want the kid to do.
So we talked a little bit before, you talked about creating a good flow and beginning with a greeting and instructions. Can you tell me a little bit about what you think about when you're creating what you think is a good flow for kids?
Yeah, sure. Well, it sort of depends on what your content is. If you're making an app to go along with a TV show or a book, then you obviously have a character that you might want to have greet your user into the app and maybe guide them along the way so that they can click on someone in a corner and get help if they get stuck. But not all apps require that. There are some that are free-form apps for drawing, or
Sure.
and those don't need characters. And some apps are really targeted toward learning, so there will be right and wrong answers, and other apps can be free-form, just sort of exploring either motor skills like drawing letters or just making art, or stories.
That's great. So how do you then, so obviously there's audio, there's visual, and there's text. How do you decide how to use audio, say?
Yeah, audio is a good one. It's a really great way to give kids feedback about that, for example, that a touch has registered, or that they've gotten something correct or incorrect. You definitely want to think hard about any background music. Background music can focus a kid's attention.
Okay.
Adults often know this. If they've ever gotten addicted to a video game, they know that the music can be pretty compelling.
Yes.
With mobile apps, you just want to make sure it's not annoying, such that the parents are going to want to uninstall the app.
Yeah, and text must be interesting. I feel that my niece knows the word play, but it must be some symbol and placement. How do you use text for people that can't read?
Right, well, you don't need to.
Yeah.
There are definitely sort of a set of symbols that have been codified that mean play or pause or give me a hint or restart, go home. So using those is really helpful for pre-readers. And then once you actually have readers, one good guideline is to use a font that's similar to the font that kids learn when writing.
Okay.
Typophiles will tell you that there are different ways you can write the letter A, like single
Sure.
or double decker, and same with the letter G. And so you want to make sure that the letter shapes are recognizable to young kids.
That makes a lot of sense. So there's also, when kids are online and sometimes apps gather information, sometimes there's information for parents. How do you deal with sort of this piece of the app is for kids, but I want parents to know what's going on?
Right. Yep. You can have a special section of your app that helps parents understand how they might interact with the app with their kid, so that it's a joint experience.
Sure.
And that helps explain what any learning objectives of the app are. But you can't rely on parents to go to a special part of the app to
Sure.
find that. And then you also need to be really careful to protect kids from things that they aren't meant to do. For example, make purchases in
Right.
both the iTunes store and the Play Store. Right now, after you make a purchase, there's a period of time where more purchases can be made without re-entering a password.
You
so
are right.
You want to protect kids from that.
Definitely, definitely. So if someone's getting into creating apps for kids specifically, can you tell them, are there good websites to go to? Where can they find information? Are there certain tools?
Yeah, my favorite is the Sesame Workshop Best Practices Guide. That's a PDF that
Okay.
if you search online, you'll find it. And it really outlines research that they've done from over 50 studies about how kids interact with tablets.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
So, and another thing that you do, which is very interesting, is the Motherboard podcast. So tell me a little bit how you got started with that.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's a podcast for moms in tech, sharing the stories of moms with a variety of situations. I got into it because I became a mom and I realized that I didn't have any role models. I worked with a bunch of guys, and that's not their fault.
Yes.
And they were also 20-something guys, not in a phase of life where they were having kids. Not their fault either. But it meant that no one at my company had ever figured out where to pump milk or what it might mean to go part-time. And so
Sure.
I had to be a pioneer, and I didn't want to. I just wanted to show up and do my work. So my goal is to share stories so that women can get this information from other women who've already done it.
Sure.
And not have to reinvent the wheel.
So what's the response been like to the podcast?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I don't know what to say.
No, people are listening and giving you feedback and stuff. That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to talking to you more.
Thank you.